Welcome to the Queer Witch Project, your resource for all things queer and witchy. I am Demona Peacock, a fabulous, non-binary, neurospicy, ordained queerdo with a fascination for all things cycles, symbolism, and patterns.
And I'm Moon Kitty, your queer femme, poly kitchen witch, and proud geek. Today we are doing a numerology for 2026 episode.
Oh, joy!
Oh, joy. Thank God 2025 is over. So, Demona, this
Well,
is your specialty and everything. So, before we dive into this, hopefully 2026 will bring, can you give us a quick refresher on what is the numerological 9-year cycle?
okay, so I really love doing bonus episodes at the new year because that's where globally we shift from agreeing that this calendar year has this numerological value, number value, and now this year has a different number value. So just saying, because we as a species has assigned this number, it gets all of this number's personality. So in numerology is a 9 cycle. There are 1 through 9 and 0, but we don't count it because it's 0. You can't count 0, sure.
Mm-hmm.
But they all have archetypal personalities, energies, vibrations. And so every year gets in numerology, when you have a multiple digit number to get to its essence, its 1 digit essence, you add the numbers together.
Mm-hmm.
So in this year that we're leaving in 2025, if you add that all together, 2 plus 2,
Plus
omit
5.
0 plus 5, we get 9. And that means that if the numerology cycle is 1 through 9, we're at the end of that cycle, and we always will pass over to the beginning of a new cycle. So what is the 9-year cycle? It pretty much a cycle that we all go through in our own ways globally, but also personally. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
we're on different cycles, but that's something I will cover
Mm-hmm.
closer to the end. But the cycle kind of goes like this. When you're in a 1 year, you are very focused on starting new projects, new beginnings, fresh starts, anything's possible, and it's really just fresh starts on things
Mm-hmm.
of a whole new 9 cycle. Think about how each decade that you've lived has really, you can reflect back at every decade. When I was in my 20s versus when I was in my 30s versus
Mm-hmm.
when I was in my early 20s, the 9-year cycle kind of mimics
Mm-hmm.
that. It's just the, numerological system instead of the metric.
Mm-hmm.
Nines instead of tens.
Right.
So you start something, and then in a 2, it's about collaboration, relating to things, balancing things. It's instead of just being that singular focus of you and what's new, it's who's going to help me with this, or who's going to work with me through this 9-year cycle. Who do I surround myself with? How do I balance my time? So you got the beginning, then you get like this introduction of a balance, and then in the 3-year, it's about creating, inspiring or being inspired, expressing creativity, getting stricken by great ideas, in which when you move to the 4, you're going to start building on those.
Mm-hmm.
So 4 is like building structure, creating guidelines, a plan, and working that plan, and just creating the structure around, what this whole 9-year cycle, whatever it is for you.
Mm-hmm.
And once you get through that 4 phase where you've gotten the blueprints done and you're laying the foundation and you're building the plan and you're executing the plan, the 5 comes in like the stupid Kool-Aid man, and he goes, "Oh yeah," and he likes to change everything. He likes to
Mm-hmm.
break down those walls, and he alters your blueprints. So that you have to leave room for flexibility in your plans for the next 9 years, because once you have a plan and you start testing it out, sometimes you have to shift and change. You have to roll with the punches sometimes. So just on a 5-year, we expect changes to happen. The other thing about 5 is exploration and travel. And then 6 is the next one. And 6 is like healing and recovery and rebalancing after all the changes the 5 brought. So you rest and recover, and you attend to, anything that needs to be kind of put
Mm-hmm.
back in a more efficient place from the 4 after the 5. And then from the 6, you move into a 7-year, which is about analysis and spirituality and really taking time for yourself. It's kind of the hermit number where you take that time to really soul search for how to execute the next, higher numbers of years. So it's kind of a recalibration.
Hmm.
After the physical recalibration of the six, now you have a spiritual and mental recalibration in the seven. Because in the 8 year, you're going to be asked to put it all to the test. It all gets put to the test. Everything that you have learned, execute. You want to show how what you've learned over these years can bring you success when you apply it. So it's all about applying what you've learned and putting it to the test. And you will experience successes and maybe you'll experience more failures, but you'll pivot faster because,
Hmm.
you've done it before. So that's like a lot of self-mastery comes in the eight.
Hmm.
And then in the nine, it all becomes old hat. And you're like, I have achieved greatness in these projects. In my 9 year, I've worked for almost a decade on this and I have mastered or not.
Hmm.
And the thing about the nine is it brings endings and letting things go. Sometimes you've reached fullness and capacity for what you can do in a particular part of your life, and it's time to move on to something else. And that's why the nines are, bittersweet sometimes because you have to know what it's time to let go of so that new things can happen in the next 1 year cycle. And we, right now, are on that very precipice where we're going to wrap around from a global 9 year to a global 1 year. So I think my message of hope around this whole thing is that anything can change, everything can change.
Wait,
Change
wait,
is
hold on a
guaranteed.
second. Before we go into this 9 year, you're saying, so we're going from a nine to things are going to change, things are going to get better, right?
Well, I didn't
Oh,
say better, but that's the hope, right?
okay. Well, I'm going to put on my rose colored glasses here just to be certain that we are going into this
Okay.
year of change and hope and everything else globally that we can knock off all the that happened in the past year. So we go into something different.
So now that you're rose-colored glasses,
Mhm.
sure, into something better.
We are better.
We're gonna get better.
Better does not mean
But
easier, but better means better. It doesn't mean it's not going to be a lot of work. But I'm
yeah,
going with that idea of it can't get worse. It has to
which
get
is
better.
yeah, and honestly, it gets better was a campaign
Hmm.
that a phrase that our queer elders brought out a lot to help with prevention of people in their teens seeing life as hopeless because of being born different and
Hmm.
in a world that doesn't accept us. So I know that it gets better is a phrase that I don't want to minimize it and
No.
I don't want it to minimize other people's experiences, but I will say that there will always be cycles that bring better things.
Hmm.
And I will say that with age, there are a lot of things about life that have gotten better,
Yeah.
especially as a queer person
Hmm.
and finding your own family and, building a social life that in a tune with who you are and not with what you were surrounded with growing up and had no control over.
Hmm. And we're talking about it with the change and everything else, that even though right now it still looks bleak, if you are queer, if you are on a spectrum of any sort of non-stereotypical heteronormative kind of perspective, but we have been here before, and each time as the endings we reach a new ending, we move forward. So even as we're moving forward in this point of hopelessness, it feels like there is more acceptance of people. There is now, it's almost like there's a minority who are trying to keep things the way they work. But if you talk to the average person, they're not going, the phobia around queer people is much less than it was 10 years ago and 10 years before that. The phobia has gotten a lot less. The understanding of trying to understand that autistic or neurodivergent or other things, these are not disabilities, these are aspects of life that are different, and the understanding of things around it. So I think over these years, we've stopped framing these as negative. You are on the outskirts, but now, hey, we are understanding these more. We are coming to learn more. We are learning and we are putting that into a new state, a new beginning, which we will just keep growing on.
I do agree that their information is a lot more accessible. And if you're not willing to teach the youth will teach themselves
Hmm.
because the tools, so they have so many amazing tools of, accessible information to them. They obviously have to learn discernment and what aligns and, leaving what doesn't and not being able to be, manipulated through propaganda and people with agendas. So like there's still a lot of learning curve to it,
Hmm.
but there is so much more information out there and there's just so much more people living their true authentic selves
Hmm.
out loud.
Hmm.
And so you certain things are not going back underground. I don't like certain people will never end up back in the closet. And as a society, how we treat them will really shape history.
Hmm.
But I do think we are still learning our humanity, and
Hmm.
we will always be pushing against those that have somehow lost
Hmm.
their sense of what's humane. Treating humans as humans, regardless of how we identify or express ourselves or how we love people. I really do think that society, we have an ability, we have the tools, we have the technology to talk about these things.
Hmm.
And I think if we can talk about it, we can be better about it. So hopefully there will be big global changes coming
Hmm.
and new beginnings on a horizon.
Hmm.
And maybe we're really looking at what systems we can leave in the past, what's not working, what needs to be let go of, accumulating into this whole shit show of a year that we've had
Hmm.
of 2025. Yeah, I really, really hope that on a global level, these are the last dying breaths of learning the old ways that are no longer going to work in a world where we have modern technology, we have a smaller world, we have communication, we could work together, we can build something new, we
Hmm.
can collaborate. Remember that 9 year cycle, that new 9 year cycle for us is coming up. So what are we beginning? How are we collaborating? How are we balancing that? How are we going to be inspired? How are we going to express our ideas? How are we going to make blueprints? How are we going to plan? How are we going to build? How are we going to adapt? How are we going to change? How are we going to shift? How are we going to heal? How are we going to balance? How are we going to take care of what we're building? How
Hmm.
are we going to invest in ourselves and our spiritual paths and our human nature advancing into a humane society? How are we going to put all of that we've learned this past 9 year cycles and this upcoming 9 year cycle, putting it to the test and building success and building community and people around us and networking? How are we going to put all of this technology to its best and brightest tasks of doing things that actually help humanity and isn't just, robbing from humanity? And that brings us back to where we're at now in the 9 year cycle, which also I do say endings, let things go, but also it on a spiritual level, the nine is the humanitarian number. And I keep saying humane, humanitarian. You really think about it on me in a meat suit, doing whatever it is I do, expressing myself however I express. I am a human that is no better and no worse than the human across the street or across the
Hmm.
border or downstairs from me or in the next town or in the next city or on the next continent. We are all human beings on this earth. We're one species. Like we could just, if we could just, be humane about how we treat each other
Hmm.
and not try to make ourselves better or worse than victims of, taking advantage of, like just kindness, love. We have to create those balances too. And I really think nine, the lesson of nine is remembering the humanitarian efforts that it takes to actually survive on this rock of floating planets in the universe that twirling around the star we called the sun.
Hmm.
Putting it all into perspective there.
Hmm. Yes. But together as a people,
Yeah.
as humans, again, saying humans, maybe there are other entities that have not yet expressed themselves to the human race as of this point in time. That is, we are only aware that we are humans on this planet. But it's that, again, that idea, the global beginnings. We can take the remnants of what we have learned, the remnants of societies that don't work, the remnants of fascism, the remnants of hate, the remnants of greed, the remnants of corporate billionaires that do nothing. All those kinds of things that we can take and we can rise up and rise against. And with this year, again, I'm speaking in the context of the United States of America. And again, I acknowledging that I'm speaking from California, a very blue state, which has very entitled opinions. And I do say entitled because some of our things we probably should have a little bit more respect to, a little more understanding on. But the idea of the concept that we are all human, we can do better, that no one should starve, that no one should be worried about
Yeah.
food, no one should be worried about how they're going to pay for medical care or the needs of the education of their children, that they have a roof that's safe over their head, all of these things that
That
should
we're born
be
equal and with some inalienable rights or something like
right.
that. I don't know.
Something
Let's
like that.
uphold the
Yeah.
Constitution because that's really just a document of really good ideas that have, that we've tried out a few times and added addendums to, like, let's respect some of that history. I don't know.
Right. But all of that to say, we have the ability in this new year,
Yeah.
this 2026 year, we have midterm elections again. We have the
Mm.
ability to vote out, recontextualize where we're at and how we are going to set up the next 9 year cycle. So there is that thing. And with that, I talk about, and I want to say, educate yourself. Don't listen to me, what I'm saying. Don't listen to what anyone else is saying. Educate yourself about what it is. Think about what you want in the world you want. And here's your chance to do something in this next 9 year cycle to bring about the next stage of the world that you want to be a part of and you want your children to be a part of.
Yeah. And, voting is one of the many things that can
Hmm.
be done.
Yes.
And you just have to figure out what your niche is and how you contribute to the web.
Hmm.
And what I have learned in my many years and with the people that I have been blessed, literally blessed to be surrounded by, is that everybody does their part when you've built your little community, your web of people. You
Hmm.
find people that are your vibe. And if they're not your vibe, you don't have to let them in. It's great to
Hmm.
be inclusive, but also it's important to know what your vibe is and know what resonates with that, what's harmonious with that. And you build your web of people and you contribute what you can and they contribute what they can and everybody does a little bit and there's amazing things that can happen
Hmm.
when everybody does a little bit. So
Absolutely.
find your people. That's a queer motto, if
Hmm.
nothing else. Like, no shame in the chosen family game whatsoever.
Awesome.
What are you starting new? Think about that as you're going
Hmm.
to the new year. Oh, and I said the one thing that I said I would mention
Hmm.
earlier, I said I'd mention it later on, is we're talking about 2025 is a global year 9, and 2026 is a global year 1. 2 plus 2 plus 6 will get us to 11,
We'll get
and
us to
that gets us
10
back,
and then.
or sorry, 10, yeah. And then you add the 1 and the 0 and you get the 1 again. But there's also, and if any of our listeners have listened to our previous New Year's episodes, you will know that there is something called a personal
Hmm.
year number. And your personal year number is based off of, at like with your, we've talked numerology and we've talked about the life path number, that's your birthday. But the personal year number is your month of birth and your day of birth added to and reduced from the current year. So for me, mine is always easy because it always, yours too,
Hmm.
adds up to our month. Both of our months and our days add up to 9 when they're together. So all we have to do is add 9 to the current year. And in numerology, as I mentioned, it's a 9 year cycle. So
Hmm.
when you add 9 to something and then add the digits together and reduce it back down, you're always going to end up with whatever you added the 9 to. So adding a 1 or 9 to the 1, we get back to 10, which is a
Hmm.
1 for both of us. So we're
Right.
we're really on the precipice of beginnings where we really
Hmm.
feel this shift on a personal level, but not everybody will. Sometimes
Hmm.
their months and day together will add up to like a 4, and then they'll add 4 to the 1, and you'll be in a 5 personal year. So I
Hmm.
think it's also important not only to know that globally we're shifting into a 1 year, but go calculate what your personal year number is. And just to clarify, you take your month of birth. If it's a November, you would be a 2 because 11 ends up being a 2. If it's December, you're a 3.
Mm-hmm.
So just remember, so your month of birth, and you add that to your day of birth. And again, if it's a double digit, reduce it down right
Mm-hmm.
away. I was born on a 30th, so that means it's a 3. I was
Mm-hmm.
born in the 6th month on the 30th, so mine's a 9. And add that to the current year, and you can also add it to the past year. The one,
Mm-hmm.
because we're on that precipice right here at the new year. So imagine where you were going this past year and where you're headed this next year. Figure out where your personal year is, where you're at in your personal year cycle, so that as these global new beginnings begin, you also can see on a personal year how you relate to it too,
Mm-hmm.
to the shifting of energy.
Right. And if you ever want some fun, do that personal calculations for different years and then relate it back to that what Damona said about ones being beginnings, twos relating, collaborating, threes creating, fours building, fives changing, six rebalance, seven spirituality analysis, eight putting it to the test, and nine nindings. I bet if you go back and you think about what you happened during the course of that year at any given point in time, it's eerie how much it aligns.
Mm-hmm,
Outside of
mm-hmm.
whatever you're doing, the overall theme for that year will have something to do with the numerological meaning for that particular year in the greater context of the global year.
Yeah, it is kind of fun to, like, the way I would do that is say, pick a number, maybe 10, go 10 years back, and you just write from this year and 10 years back. So from 2025 to 24, 23, 22, 21, 20, and on back, 1918, 2018, 20, and then just write the years, and then in that, add to the list in those years anything that you can remember that when you look back, like, what was significant for me about this year? What do I remember happened that in my life that was somewhat significant in
Mm-hmm.
this year? And then go figure out where in the numerology 9 year cycle that year fell. And yeah, it's very
Mm-hmm.
fascinating. Because I remember, I think I got pregnant in a 5 year. Child was born when I was in a 6 personal year. So it was all about, like, the 5 year was, oh, guess what? Everything's changing now.
Mm-hmm.
And the 6 year was, look, you have a family now.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, there's some weird things that sometimes line up. Like, sometimes people will do their calculations like, oh, this year is really significant because I moved 3 times in that year. And then you go calculate it and it was a 5 personal year. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
yep, the year of travel and moving
Mm-hmm.
and change. That makes so much
Exactly.
sense. Yeah.
Yes. So it's really
So,
fun to do. Anyway.
well, I hope everybody out there enjoys some numerology fun for this New Year's. And I hope that we can all seriously think about what's coming next, what you wish to manifest into the world, and what you want to see happening, and start expressing that. Put it in the comments even. What do
Mm-hmm.
you want? What changes do you wish to see? What new systems do you want in place? What are you letting go of?
Mm-hmm.
What are we ready to just kick to the curb and get rid of?
Mm-hmm.
And release. What are you doing in this transitional time? Give us a comments and tell us what your New Year's is bringing for you.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for listening to the Queer Witch Project, especially after all of these years. We have enjoyed you immensely. All of our previous episodes can be found on YouTube by looking up Queer Witch Project. You can find us in podcast mode or video mode, and we will be there in perpetuity until, as long as YouTube shall last.
So if you would like to receive a tarot or numerology reading from Damona or a tarot or charm reading from me, you can contact us directly at damonacat11.2@gmail.com. That's DAMONAKAT11.2@gmail.com, or Moon Kitty Tarot, MOONKITTEETAROT@gmail.com. And remember, queerness is a key to magic.
Be yourself and love rebelliously.
Always.
Yay!
Bye.
Happy New Year!
Happy New Year. Let's go number one.